The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here. Right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow. I thank you for joining today.
So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about how everything that Solomon had was seemingly not enough. This man had wisdom that attracted people to him. He had wealth, he had fame, the covering of God. There was peace between the nations. Solomon built a temple to the Lord, a very significant structure to the United Kingdom of Israel. He was set. However, Solomon also had an appetite for foreign women, and he set himself up quite the buffet of 700 wives to satisfy his matrimonial hunger, and a dessert bar on the side of 300 women for when he had a particular type of sweet tooth. Despite being warned about the dangers of such indulgences, because the Lord already told him, you better leave these foreign women alone because they're going to turn your heart away from me. Solomon didn't listen. He had it his way. Before you know it, that's exactly what happened. Solomon's prior devotion to building a temple to the Lord was eclipsed by his dedication to building shrines and altars for the worship of the detestable lowercase g gods that his wives worshiped. Needless to say, that was a problem. The Lord wasn't having it. And naturally, the dynamic between Solomon and the Lord shifted because the allegiance that Solomon had to the Lord was no more. I imagine that it was with great disappointment that the Lord set into motion the consequences that Solomon had to face as a result of his disloyalty. One of the consequences was a disruption in peace. Because, mind you, peace is a fruit of the Spirit of God. So, when Solomon decided no longer to be in alignment with God, he forfeited his right to partake of the fruit. The Lord raised up two men. One was named Hadad from Edom, another Rezon from Aram. And they were effectively tasked with being Solomon's adversaries and inevitably disrupting the peace that Solomon once nestled himself in. Whereas at one point, Solomon could just twiddle his thumbs and walk around the palace, he now was faced with war, battle, political tension between the Edomites and the Arameans. In addition to the disruption of peace, the Lord promised to strip most of the kingdom from Solomon's son, which directly impacted Solomon's legacy. Not only did the Lord promise to strip it from Solomon's son, he knew exactly who he was going to give it to. One of King Solomon's officials, named Jeroboam, was put in charge of King Solomon's labor force of the tribes of Joseph. One day he was minding his business going for a walk. He ran into a prophet of the Lord named Ahijah. Now, Ahijah randomly took off his new cloak and started ripping it into pieces. Now, I imagine that Jeroboam started looking around like, yo, does anybody else see this man? Like, this not normal. And when he realized that there was no one else to be found, Jeroboam probably started picking up his pace. After ripping his cloak into pieces, Ahijah extended the pieces to Jeroboam and said, take 10 pieces. No, man, I'm good. I got a cloak already. I don't need your pieced up cloak. Listen, man, I'm not crazy. Take 10 pieces for yourself. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Yo, bro, why didn't you just start there? I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshiped the goddess of the Sidonians, the god of the Moabites, and the god of the Ammonites. They've been hard headed and not done what is right. So I'll take the kingdom from Solomon's son's hands and give you 10 tribes. Now, press pause for a quick second. Who is they? The Lord said, I'm going to do this because they have forsaken me. We'll come back to that later. So after Ahijah told Jeroboam what the Lord said, King Solomon's tripping. He forsook me. He worshiping all these other gods. I'm stripping the kingdom from his son. I'm going to give you 10 of the tribes. Then the Lord set the terms and conditions. Ahijah continued the message of the Lord by saying, I will take you and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will be king over Israel. And if you do what I command you and walk in obedience to me, I'll be with you. I will build you a dynasty, and for a while, I'll humble David's descendants because of this. Picture this. This man is just minding his business, walking, and his life just changed. The Lord just dropped most of the kingdom in his lap. And as I'm sure you know, word got around. When Solomon found out, he tried to off Jeroboam, just get rid of him to ensure that nothing that the Lord promised will come to pass. Jeroboam had enough sense to run, and he found safety in Egypt until after Solomon died and left his son, Rehoboam, to be the next king. Now, Rehoboam, who was born before Solomon became king, went up north to Shechem, where all Israel gathered to make him king. Shechem just happened to be a town that was more conveniently located for the northern tribes to travel. So Rehoboam made his way to Shechem. Meanwhile, word got back to Jeroboam in Egypt that Solomon had died and was no longer a threat. So Jeroboam joined the assembly in Shechem. The people weren't too quick to make Rehoboam their king. They wanted to get a few things straight first. So the people approached him. Your pops put a lot of pressure on us with his harsh labor and heavy taxes. Ease up on us a little bit and we'll be your loyal subjects. Bet. Okay. Give me 3 days to think about it. Then come back and holler at me. So the people agreed. Rehoboam gathered some of the old heads who had counseled his pops to ask for their advice. The old heads told him, well, son, give them what they want. If you scratch their back now, they'll tackle every itch that dares to come your way for the rest of your days. Rehoboam wasn't a fan. He didn't really want to hear all that. He didn't care for their advice. So he sought advice from his homeboys, some young men who he grew up with. And they said, man, you need to tell those crybabies to miss you with all that whining. Your daddy was mean. Life is so hard. Be nice to us. You better man up and show them who's boss. Tell them your pinky finger is thicker than your pop's waist and that they ain't seen nothing yet. They thought your pops was harsh? Show them harsh. I'm just going to put a real quick plug right there. Not everyone who gives loud advice is giving sound advice. So be very careful whose counsel you entertain. Rehoboam heard it from both ends. He heard the advice of the old heads. He heard the advice of his peer. And it is very clear that Rehoboam did not inherit King Solomon's wisdom because he rejected the advice of the old heads and went with the ignorant, self-serving advice of the homies. They stroked his ego and had him really smelling himself. 3 days passed, and Jeroboam and all the people returned to see if Rehoboam had enough sense to ease up on him. It is worth mentioning that Jeroboam positioned himself with the people to see how Rehoboam was going to act. He did not assert himself because he already knew the outcome would result in him being king. Hear me when I say this. When God gives you a word, you don't have to force it. Just let it unfold. Rehoboam addressed the people. Y'all came to me crying about how heavy of a burden my pops put on you. I'm going to make it even heavier. He punished you with whips. I'll do so with scorpions. When all the people realized that Rehoboam refused to listen to them, they decided to abandon their loyalty to David's dynasty and ultimately they made Jeroboam their king. Only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin remained faithful to Rehoboam, resulting in another kingdom split. The northern kingdom, known as Israel, which was made up of the majority of the tribes, were followers of Jeroboam. The southern kingdom, known as Judah, which was made up of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, were followers of Rehoboam. Rehoboam decided to gather troops from the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin so that he could go to war. He wanted to go fight for the kingdom back. The Lord sent a prophet to stop Rehoboam in his tracks and told him, bro, you need to go on back home. Don't fight your relatives. So Rehoboam and all of his troops obeyed the word of the Lord. They turned around and they went back home as the Lord commanded. Why are we here again? We already saw the kingdom split before when Saul died and some of the tribes wanted to remain faithful to the house of Saul, while others wanted to be loyal to David. David unified the kingdoms, but now here we are once more with a split kingdom. What happened? Through Solomon's matrimony with foreign women, his heart was turned to idol gods, gods who stood for practices that were wicked and evil in the eyes of the Lord. And I don't know if you remember earlier when the Lord spoke through Prophet Ahijah and told Jeroboam that the kingdom would largely be ripped from Solomon because they forsook the Lord and worshiped the gods and goddesses of other nations. When Solomon shifted his worship from the Lord to other gods, what he did was created a culture that made it possible and even permissible for the people to do the same. When the Lord said, they forsook me, he was referring to the Israelites. He was referring to his chosen people because Solomon made it okay. The fact that he built the temple and then turned around with those same hands, that same mind, and built shrines and altars for these idol gods, what he was saying is, we can kind of worship whoever we want to worship. The people followed in his footsteps. That was an issue. And though the Lord should have snatched everything from Solomon, the Lord still allowed a descendant of David to remain on the throne because in 2 Samuel chapter 7, the Lord promised to establish the throne of David's kingdom forever, first through Solomon, but ultimately through Jesus Christ. Solomon's rebellion and the way that he influenced God's people to also forsake the Lord by worshiping false gods set into motion a series of events, a series of kingdoms, a series of tragedies that would leave the people longing for the Messiah, the chosen one, anointed to bring peace and restore what was torn apart because of their disloyalty to the Lord. That is the journey that we are about to be discussing. I look forward to sharing with you more in our next episodes if the Lord blesses me to record another. I thank you so much for your love and support. If you have not already, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, bye for now.